This administration right now, with current asylum laws, could do last in, first up for hearings. Instead of handing people a piece of paper and say, you're here for the next 8 years until the next asylum hearing, if you cross the border illegally right now, they say you have to stay right here at the border for the next 2 weeks. Your hearing is in 2 weeks, and it's in that courtroom right over there here at the border. They go through the legal process to be able to request asylum. When they do not qualify, they're returned. That sends an entirely different signal, because what the Border Patrol tells me now is when individuals cross the border, get a piece of paper that says you're going to be here for the next 8 years, they quickly pull out their cell phone, snap a picture of it, text their family back home, and say, I paid this cartel member, I crossed at this spot, I said these words, and I got this piece of paper, come join me. And the next person comes, and the next person comes. If what happens instead when they cross the border, they get there and their hearing is in 2 weeks, and then they find out they don't qualify for asylum and they're returned, they instead text their family members and say, don't come, the border's closed. Nothing has changed at that point other than the enforcement. That can be done right now. Deport people that a court has ruled they should be deported. This is not mean, this is following the law. We have literally thousands of people in the United States that a federal court has ruled a final order of removal on individuals and said you are not legal in this country and you've gone through all of the process, you need to be removed. Currently, ICE is not removing them. Again, sending a signal to everyone that wants to come here illegally, if you pay the cartels, you get across. You stay for 8 years, and then after 8 years, no one's looking for you. That's why we have 2 million people last year illegally crossing the border. That's why we had 250,000 people last month illegally cross the border, because this administration just keeps saying, I don't want to be mean. Currently, what's happening? When individuals come across the border, they're given notification. They'll request for asylum. All they have to say is, I have credible fear. They'll say, what city would you like to go to in the entire U.S.? You can go to any city you want to go to. They pick their city. They're given a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper, they're told, here's your court date, 8 years in the future. 8 years in the future. And then go anywhere they want to in the country for the next 8 years. And they're told to keep that piece of paper with them. If they're ever pulled over, they can pull it out and show, I'm awaiting my court date. I'm here for the next 8 years. Now, let me just ask you a simple question. If I've got to go through the legal process to be able to get a visa for a work visa and go through all of that process and fill out paperwork, and I'll be here just temporarily for a season, or I can illegally cross the border and I'll be here for the next 8 years, which would you pick? This administration is literally incentivizing this and encouraging more people to illegally cross the border. It's interesting, I still have folks that catch me and say, I don't see anything about it in the news anymore. So what's happening? Just yesterday, the leadership of CBP did their news release that they normally do. In their news release, they released out, CBP works to secure and manage our borders while building a fair and orderly migration system. This was a picture taken the day before their press release. This was taken in the Eagle Pass area of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. And yes, that line you see are people coming across the river in Eagle Pass. Now, you don't catch everything because you can't see how much farther it goes this way and how much farther it goes that way. This was the day before CBP released this statement. We work to secure and manage our borders while building a fair and orderly migration system. Very first page of the news release, CBP leadership said, after many months of planning, we are executing a comprehensive strategy to safely, orderly, and humanely manage our borders. CBP is surging personnel and resources to the border, increasing processing capacity, securing more ground and air transportation, and increasing medical supplies, food, water, and other resources to ensure a humane environment for those being processed. This is our frustration with the administration right now. Because the media has turned away and decided they're not going to look at this, that they're not going to pay attention to it, everyone seems to just think everything's just gotten fine. What's really happening on our southern border, again from current statistics right now, they're only able to handle 44% of the flow coming across the border. At 44% of the flow, right now, they are releasing thousands of people directly into the country with a notice to report saying, turn yourself in to an ICE facility anywhere in the country and they'll process you there because they can't handle the backlog of the thousands of people coming across. What are we talking about, thousands of people? Well, remember last year when the cameras were all focused on the southern border? Last year there were 6,500 migrants coming across a day at this time. And all the cameras were focused on the southern border because it was such a massive influx of people because 6,500 migrants were crossing a day. Right now, 7,800 migrants are crossing a day. Last month, the CBP released almost 250,000 people illegally crossed our southern border in 1 month. That beat the old record of the month before, when there was just under that by a couple thousand people. 250,000 people a month illegally crossing the border. Now, to their credit, about half of those are turned away under what's called Title 42 authority because of the pandemic. Those single adults, half of them are turned back. But the interesting thing is the administration says on May the 23rd, yes, next week, on May the 23rd, they want to end Title 42 authority, and so they're not turning anyone away at the border. So literally all 250,000 cross into the country and no one gets turned away. When that happens, DHS's own numbers have estimated that when that occurs, they estimate that they will see 1 million people surge to the border in 6 weeks. They're allowing 250,000 people to cross the border, turning half of them away, but their plan is next week they're going to stop turning anyone away. Everyone's going to cross in. Currently, under this administration, we have a record low number of deportations that are happening. While we have 7,800 people a day illegally crossing the border, ICE is now deporting 203 people a day from the nation. So let me run those numbers past you again. 7,800 people a day illegally crossing the border, 203 people being turned around due to ICE custody and releasing them back into their country where they came from. Now, these aren't folks just from Central America. In fact, now about half of the people coming are not from Mexico or Central America. They're coming from all over the world. Last year, we had people from every single country on the planet illegally cross the border in the 2 million people that crossed the border. They came from every single country in the world. Yes, including Iran and North Korea, all of them. Because there are gaps in the fence and everyone heads towards those gaps in the fence. I'm not the only one saying that. The career professionals at Border Patrol are saying that's one of the prime things that they need. Do they say that's the only thing they need? No, there's a lot more they need, but they're saying that's a really important element that they need is that fencing. That slows people down, that funnels people towards gaps. Build the wall system. Number two, don't lift Title 42. Keep it in place. I'm not the only one saying that. I had an ambassador from a Central American country contact me this week and say, we're asking the White House not to lift Title 42 authority because in Central America, we're facing thousands of people migrating from our country, through our country from all over the world that are headed to the United States, and it's causing economic turmoil in their country. And their fear is, if President Biden lifts Title 42 authority, it's going to make a bad situation in their country even worse. And while President Biden talks about root causes in Central America is telling the United States, enforce your border, stop incentivizing people to illegally travel to your border. That's one of the root causes of migration. Federal courts have required the Biden administration to put what's called MPP, or what some people call Remain in Mexico, back in place. So the Biden administration, following the court order, has spent millions of dollars standing up facilities, putting up courtrooms, and they're putting almost no one through them. So they can tell the federal court they're doing it. What do I mean by that? 7,800 people crossing a day illegally. The Biden administration's putting about 2,000 people a month through the MPP process, simply so they can say they followed the court order, but they're not.